Hey guys, let's get to the point. Today's case is going to be very gruesome, so if you have a weak stomach, viewer discretion is advised.
So there are some movies based off this case, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Silence of the Lambs. The characters are based off Ed Gein.
Edward's family consisted of his mother Augusta, who grew up in a very religious and strict household, his stepfather George, who he worked a lot of, people described him as a very hardworking man, and he had jobs growing up. He had many jobs growing up. And his brother Henry, who was the firstborn.
His family lived in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and in 1915, Augusta forced her husband to move to Plainfield, Wisconsin. She kept her sons on a farm far from anything she considered dangerous or sinful. She managed to teach her sons that women are elements of the devil and convinced them that she is the only woman which is not included in that crowd.
Edward was described to have weird mannerisms due to him being shy and laughing at his own jokes. And when he would mention it to his mother would not care. And it's kind of strange since Edward said that him and his mother were best friends.
On April 1st, 1940, George died because of heart failure, and the brothers began to work to pay off his expenses. Now, Henry started dating this single mother of two, and they planned to move in together. And Henry started getting worried of Ed because he was very attached to his mother, but he stayed at home all the time, and they eventually started getting in arguments because Henry spoke badly of Augusta.
On March 16, 1944, Henry and Ed were burning marsh vegetation while working on the farm, and the fire started to spread. The department came and they put out the fire, but then, out of nowhere, Henry went missing, and Ed said that he couldn't find him anywhere. They sent a search party to look for Henry, and when they found him, he was face down and apparently had been dead for a while. They thought it was from heart failure, but they found bruises on his head. Later on, they found out that it was from suffocation. People started rumors that it was actually Ed who killed him, but we don't have enough evidence for that.
A year later, Augusta had a stroke and was put on bed rest, and Ed would take care of her 24/7, and she would still verbally abuse him. Then she died in December 1945 of a stroke. He was left alone and boarded every room in the house except for his mother's. He wasn't really seen a lot, and no one really noticed him, and he would only go out for errands and to grab a beer of Mary Hogan's Tavern.
Ed always made dark and creepy jokes, and then one day Mary went missing, from the tavern, and he just made a weird joke that was like, oh yeah, she was staying at my house overnight. But no one found it funny, and they actually found it very creepy and weird. On November 16th, 1957, Bernice Warden went missing when she was working at a hardware store. Frank, her son, found her since he always goes hunting and then comes back to check on her at the store. Then he couldn't find her, so he was trying to look for her, and there was a trail of blood near the exit, and that's when he called the police. But while he was waiting for the police to arrive, he saw a receipt, and it had Ed's name on it, and he was the last customer to go to that hardware store. So he calls the police, and the police and Frank go and search Ed's farm, and they made some very gruesome discoveries.
Just so you know, I will be reading this off of our notes just to be more accurate and sensitive to the situation. And also, just a quick little disclaimer, this is going to be a little bit gruesome, so just so you know. The police and Frank go to Ed's farm, and when they go in to search his home, they see Bernice's body in the outdoor kitchen. When they find Bernice, they find her hanging by her feet from an overhead pulley. She was naked, and there was a cut from her pelvic bone to her chest. It would seem as if he was taking out her insides and was decapitated. The police called for backup, and a dozen cops showed up, and they got a warrant to search the rest of the farm.
This is what the police found inside of Ed's house. They found human skulls that were turned into soup bowls. They found a chair with human skin sewed onto the seat, and he made a lampshade out of flesh.
They also found a box full of human noses, and he made belts for jeans made out of women's nipples.
He made a shade pole decorated with lips. There was a shoebox under his bed, and it contained dried women's genitalia.
On a wall of his house, there were 9 faces on the wall, but they were skinless decoration. He made a shirt out of skin, and there were someone's peeled off breasts on it. He made leggings and corsets.
When he would put on the outfit, he said he would feel very ladylike and like his mother. Mary, the tavern owner, her face was found in a plastic bag.
They also found all types of women's body parts like fingernails and tongues. In the fridge there were organs, and there was a heart on the stove.
There were about 15 different bodies in Edward's home. At 4:30 a.m., they found a sack, and inside there was a severed head with large nails in the ears that were connected with twine. It was Bernice. Ed said that it was for decoration.
Ed confessed about Mary and Bernice, but the other bodies were said to be found at the cemetery where his mom was buried.
He had a friend named Gus who would help him dig out bodies from the cemetery. Once he didn't want to work with the bodies he got from the cemetery, he started to kill so that the skin was fresh. Ed was charged with 1 count of first-degree murder. He pled not guilty for reasons of insanity.
He was sent to the Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. 10 years later, he was found guilty for first-degree murder.
You're wondering what happened to the house? The house was put up for auction since many tourists were visiting and the community got disturbed. And then it caught on fire out of nowhere, so Ed was locked up in an institution for the rest of his life, but passed away on July 26, 1984.
He was buried in Plainfield, and when they set a headstone for him, people would visit and take pieces of his headstone for souvenir. And at one point, someone stole the entire headstone.
In conclusion, Ed Gein was very popular because he got books wrote about him, he got movies made based on him. It's just he gained a lot of popularity because of his sick mind. But low-key, he was really creative. But still, everything he did was really disgusting.